Hi everyone. There's a good chance that in your past English classes, especially if they are literature based, you've already encountered something called a Bildungsroman or something very similar. In North Carolina, specifically ninth grade, the novel To Kill a Mockingbird, it's a really popular one to read, and it's a form of a Bildungsroman or a coming of age story. So I just want to give you some general background and history of these stories before you go in and read some short stories based on this genre. So what is a Bildungsroman? It is a genre that focuses on psychological and moral growth of a protagonist from youth to adult. You can think of it as a story or novel of formation or education because they are growing, they are having to learn. As you've already seen, coming of age can sometimes be considered synonymous with Bildungsromans, but they're not quite true. Think of coming of age as an umbrella term, and this is a specific subgenre of, because Bildungsromans have to have very formal topics and thematic features they must follow to be considered this. However, for this class, I'm going to kind of use those words interchangeably because for our purposes, they fit and they work. If this is a story that is all about character development, we typically have a sensitive person, sensitive for different reasons, searching for answers to life with the expectation that the experiences they're going to have will help them understand life. They're going to learn from it, they're going to gain from it, because our ultimate goal is maturity, which can come very slowly and with difficulty. So that's why these are often novels, because they're lengthy, and we have this idea of a lost child going into a mature adult. Now, historically, they do have their origins in Germanic folklore, where we have a denser or a younger son going out to the world to seek their success in vain. In 1795, Johann Wolfgang Goethe, is kind of credited with this first one. I add the or for 1767, Christoph Martin Wieland, because he also can be seen as the first example of a Bildungsroman. It kind of depends on who you go with, so I gave you both dates. As you can see, there is a big gap between these two, so it kind of depends. In 1819, Carl Morgensen coins this term, Bildungsroman, and it starts to gain popularity. By 1879, Wilhelm Dilthey revises this and kind of like brings that idea back to life. So by 1905, it is very popular. So we have a century and a half almost between our original stories being published to how popular it is. Specifically for this class with British literature, it ties over in 1824 when Thomas Carlyle translates Goethe's work to English, and it just, a light is hit, green means go, and it just takes off with our ideas and our interest. So some common characteristics that we need to know and remember is that this is typically seen as a conflict between a protagonist and society. Now, that may be because their values clash, the protagonist is an outcast, but generally through the growth that happens, the protagonist is going to become accepted in society, accept their place, accept their different ideas. Maybe society's morals become more understandable and they accept them as well. Generally, we start with some kind of loss, typically emotional, that's going to spur us into a journey. That could be literal journey or maybe a metaphorical journey. They're going to have conflict, their personal growth. So like our long part of the story, we're going through cycles, and we're going to end in maturity. Some stories you will see the protagonist reach back out and help someone in a similar situation like them, help other youths mature and grow, but that's not always required. Our protagonists can, in general, be one or multiple of these. They might be an orphan, they're a misfit, maybe they're a runaway, an artist, which fits this idea of conflict between protagonists and society. Other common character types that we see would be maybe a wicked authority figure, unrequited lover, an enchanting same-sex friend, which doesn't mean that like we're interested in them. They're enchanting in that people really like them, they're popular, they're charismatic. Again, direct contrast from our societal misfit. We're going to have a kindly teacher involved. And there's some common plot devices that you'll see throughout. So our protagonist is going to get sent off possibly, whether it's to school, jail, labor, a different relative. We might have a rags to riches, or we're rich, we have a financial crisis, and now we're starting over. They may flee or run away and start traveling in exotic lands. We're going to be alienated from immediate family, which makes sense if we get sent off. There might be physical punishment or harsh conditions the protagonist has to deal with. And then there also could be some spiritual crisis and encounters they come across. So this type of story hopefully sounds kind of familiar to you. You may have already thought of ones as you were listening of, oh, I can see that here. So Harry Potter, Percy Jackson. As I was talking, I thought of the Netflix show Schitt's Creek. They financial crisis, they get alienated from everybody they know, and we see different character growths and maturity stories. That's just one that popped in my head. So hopefully this sounds familiar. And this week you're going to look at a few short stories to see some examples, and then you're going to create your own Bildungsroman.